Captain Olivia Green stood frozen on the bridge of the UES Defender, her eyes fixed on the main screen. The alien ship had appeared without warning, materializing just beyond the moon's orbit. It was massive, at least 3 times larger than the biggest Earth vessel, and shaped like a gleaming silver teardrop. "Any response to our hails?" Olivia asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Lieutenant Sam Baker shook his head. "Nothing yet, Captain, but they haven't taken any aggressive actions either." The Defender was the flagship of Earth's small but capable defense fleet. Humanity had only recently ventured beyond their solar system, and while they had discovered microbial life on distant planets, they had never encountered another intelligent species, until today. "Keep trying all frequencies," Olivia ordered. She brushed back her short brown hair, a nervous habit from her academy days, "and inform Earth Command that we're maintaining position." The bridge fell silent as the crew watched the alien vessel. Its surface shimmered with an almost liquid quality, reflecting the distant sunlight in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, like a form of communication they couldn't understand. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission." Sam called out suddenly. It's in English." Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and the image of the alien ship was replaced by a face. At least Olivia thought it was a face. The being had a vaguely humanoid appearance, with 2 large almond-shaped eyes that glowed with an inner blue light. Its skin was pale and slightly translucent, revealing a network of luminescent veins beneath. It had no visible nose, and its mouth was just a thin line. "Greetings, people of Earth," the alien spoke, its mouth barely moving but the words coming through, clearly. "I am Ambassador Krelthar of the Zorlaxian Confederacy. We come in peace and with great urgency. We request immediate audience with your world leaders." Olivia swallowed hard before responding. "This is Captain Olivia Green of the United Earth Defense Force. Your sudden appearance in our space is concerning. What is the nature of your urgency?" The alien's eyes dimmed slightly, and Olivia could have sworn it looked sad. "Captain Green, we have traveled across 17 galaxies to reach you. Our civilization faces extinction. We need humanity's help." 48 hours later, Olivia found herself in the Grand Hall of the United Nations in New York, standing at attention behind General Victor Martinez, the head of Earth's military. The room was packed with delegates from every nation, all watching as Ambassador Krelthar and 6 other Zorlaxians entered. Up close, the aliens were even more striking. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, their slender bodies moving with fluid grace. Their skin glowed softly, the luminescence shifting with what seemed to be their emotions. "Why us?" President Laura Chen of the North American Alliance whispered to Olivia. "We're barely a century into space travel. These beings clearly have technology centuries beyond ours." "I don't know, Madam President," Olivia admitted. "But they specifically asked for you and the other world leaders by name. They've been watching us for some time." The room fell silent as Ambassador Krelthar approached the central podium. The alien surveyed the room slowly, those glowing eyes taking in every human face. Then, to everyone's shock, Krelthar sank to his knees before them. "People of Earth," the ambassador spoke, his voice carrying easily through the hall despite its soft tone. "We come before you not as conquerors, not as superiors, but as supplicants. The Zorlaxian Confederacy, once spanning 3 galaxies and over 50,000 years of civilization, stands on the brink of annihilation." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Olivia felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "We face an enemy we cannot defeat," Krelthar continued. "A force we call the Void. It is not a species as you understand the term. It is something else, a cosmic entity that consumes not just matter and energy, but consciousness itself. It has already destroyed 12 of our core worlds and billions of our people." The ambassador raised his slender hands, and a holographic display appeared above him. It showed a star system, bright and alive with planets and ships and space stations. Then a darkness spread across it, not like a shadow but like a hole in reality itself. Where it passed, Nothing remained. Our weapons cannot harm it. Our shields cannot stop it. Our fastest ships cannot outrun it, Krelthar said, his voice breaking slightly. We have studied thousands of species across the universe, seeking any who might have the qualities needed to help us fight this threat. The alien's gaze swept across the human delegates. And we found you. The room erupted in confused voices. General Martinez stepped forward, his expression skeptical. Ambassador, with all due respect, what could we possibly offer that your advanced civilization cannot? We're centuries behind you technologically. Krelthar rose to his feet, his skin pulsing with a soft blue light. It is not your technology we seek, General. It is something uniquely human, something we Zorlaxians lack, despite all our advancements. From the back of the human delegation, a voice called out. And what might that be? All heads turned to see Dr. Alan Russell, a neurobiologist known for his controversial theories about human consciousness. He wasn't supposed to be speaking, but no one stopped him. Your minds, Krelthar answered, focusing on Alan. Human consciousness operates differently than any species we have encountered. You create art for no practical purpose. You sacrifice yourselves for strangers. You hope even when logic says all is lost. The alien's voice took on an almost reverent quality. You feel with an intensity that defies reason. Alan stepped forward, ignoring the glares from military officials. You're suggesting our emotions might be a weapon against this void? Not just emotions, Dr. Russell, the ambassador replied, surprising everyone by knowing Alan's name. Your entire way of experiencing reality. The void consumes consciousness, but human consciousness, it resists in ways we don't understand. President Chen stood up. These are extraordinary claims, Ambassador. We'll need proof. Of course, Krelthar nodded. We anticipated your skepticism. He gestured to one of his companions, who stepped forward carrying what looked like a small crystal orb. This contains data from our encounters with the void and our preliminary research on human neurological responses. We offer it freely, along with access to our scientists and any technology you need to verify our claims. General Martinez took the orb carefully. I'll assemble a team of our best, minds to examine this. I volunteer, Alan said immediately, earning another glare from the general. Olivia watched the exchange with growing unease. As a military officer, she was trained to be suspicious of any alien contact, let alone one asking for help. But she couldn't deny the genuine desperation in the ambassador's voice. If what you say is true, President Chen said slowly, then this void threatens not just your civilization but potentially ours as well. Krelthar's skin dimmed to an almost gray color. Yes. If the void continues unchecked, it will eventually reach your world too. We estimate you have perhaps 50 of your years before it arrives here. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then I suggest we get to work, Alan said, breaking the silence. He approached Krelthar without fear, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. My name is Alan Russell. I study human consciousness, and I think we have a lot to talk about. The alien looked at the offered hand for a moment before, carefully taking it in his own luminescent one. Indeed we do, Dr. Russell. Indeed we do. As they shook hands, human and alien, Olivia Green couldn't help but feel they were witnessing the beginning of something momentous, something that would change the course of human history forever. 3 months after the Zorlaxians' arrival, the red dust of Mars swirled around the newly built research facility. The dome-shaped structure gleamed under the pale sunlight, a mix of Earth and alien technology that still looked strange to human eyes. Inside the main lab, Dr. Alan Russell rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly in days, too fascinated by the data the Zorlaxians had shared. Screens around him displayed brain scans, human on the left, Zorlaxian on the right, with stark differences highlighted in various colors. You should rest, Dr. Russell, said a soft voice behind him. Alan turned to see Ambassador Krelthar, the alien's skin glowing a gentle blue in the dim light of the lab. So should you, Alan replied with a small smile. Do Zorlaxians even need sleep? We enter a regenerative state for approximately 2 of your Earth hours each day, Krelthar explained. It is different from human sleep. We do not dream. That's exactly what fascinates me, Alan said, pointing to the brain scans. Your species processes information so differently from ours. You're more logical, more efficient, but we lack something vital, Krelthar finished. Something the void cannot comprehend. The door to the lab slid open, and Lieutenant Kate Peterson walked in. She wore the standard United Earth Defense Force uniform, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Despite the peaceful nature of the mission, the military insisted on maintaining a presence at the facility. Dr. Russell, the new equipment has arrived from Earth, Kate announced, and Mr. Winters is already trying to modify it. Alan groaned. Paul needs to stop tinkering with everything that comes through the door. His modifications have improved efficiency by 37%, Krelthar noted. His mind works, unexpectedly, even for a human. The three of them walked through the curved corridors of the research facility toward the loading bay. Other scientists and military personnel nodded as they passed, the mix of humans and Zorlaxians now a common sight. Paul Winters was indeed tinkering with the newly arrived equipment, a neural interface machine designed to measure consciousness patterns. His dark hair was messy, and grease stained his hands as he reworked the machine's inner components. Paul, we need that equipment intact, Alan said with exasperation. Paul looked up, his eyes bright with excitement. It is intact. I'm just making it better. He gestured to a Zorlaxian scientist standing nearby. Tell them, Velnar, the original design couldn't detect the deeper neural patterns. The Zorlaxian nodded. His modifications are sound. This human has an unusual ability to understand systems he has never seen before. Kate crossed her arms. That's why he got kicked out of 3 engineering programs. He couldn't follow instructions. Instructions limit creativity. Paul shrugged. And right now, we need all the creativity we can get. Alan couldn't argue with that. In the 3 months since the joint research project began, they had made remarkable progress understanding the differences between human and Zorlaxian minds. The aliens possessed vast knowledge and technology, but they approached problems with a rigid logic that sometimes missed unconventional solutions. Humans, on the other hand, made intuitive leaps that often baffled the Zorlaxians. They took risks, followed hunches, and sometimes discovered answers through what seemed like pure luck. The neural interface is ready, Paul announced, closing the machine's panel. Who wants to go first? I will, Kate volunteered before Alan could speak. The military wants to know exactly what these machines do to human brains. As Paul and Velnar prepared Kate for the scan, Alan walked Krelthar to the observation room. Lieutenant Peterson does not trust us, the ambassador observed. It's not personal, Alan explained. Military training teaches caution, but Kate is one of the good ones. She volunteered for this assignment when many others refused. Krelthar's skin pulsed with a yellow light. Curiosity, Alan had learned. Why did you choose these specific humans for your team? The soldier and the unconventional engineer? Alan watched through the window as Kate settled into the scanning chair. Because they represent different aspects of humanity. Kate has discipline and courage. Paul has innovation and intuition. Together with my scientific approach, we cover the spectrum of human problem-solving. And you believe this? Diversity of thought is what will help us defeat the void. I believe it's our best chance, Alan nodded. Your people are brilliant, Ambassador, but you think too much alike. Humans are messy, contradictory, and often irrational. But that unpredictability might be exactly what we need. The neural interface machine hummed to life. On the monitors, Kate's brain activity appeared as a swirling pattern of colors and light. The Zorlaxians in the room leaned forward, fascinated by the display. Look at the emotional centers, Alan pointed out. See how active they are, even when she's performing a logical task? Humans can't separate emotion from reason. It's all connected for us. Suddenly, the doors to the observation room burst open. A young Zorlaxian rushed in, skin flashing urgent red. Ambassador, a probe has returned from the outer rim, the messenger said. It contains data about the void's latest movements. Within minutes, they had transferred the probe's data to the main research lab. The holographic display showed a star system being engulfed by a spreading darkness. This was recorded just 7 days ago, Krelthar said grimly. The void has consumed the Zelnar system. Over 3 million of my people live there. Alan stared at the footage, a chill running down his spine. Can we analyze the composition of the void from this data? We've tried, Velnar replied. Our instruments cannot define it. It's as if it exists partially outside our reality. Paul, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stepped forward. Play that again, but run it through the neural interface. Let's see how human brains react to images of the void. The Zorlaxians looked confused, but Alan immediately understood. Brilliant, Paul. If the void affects consciousness, let's see how consciousness responds to the void. They connected the probe's data to the neural interface. Kate volunteered again, allowing the machine to scan her brain while she watched the footage of the void consuming the alien star system. The results shocked everyone. This can't be right, Velnar said, staring at the readings. Her brain is resonating with the void somehow. Kate's neural patterns showed unusual activity in areas associated with empathy and emotional processing. When they tested other humans, including Alan and Paul, they found similar responses. It's like your brains are trying to connect with it, Krelthar whispered, to understand it. Alan's mind raced with possibilities. What if that's the key? What if the void is drawn to consciousness because it's trying to understand it? And what if human consciousness, with its deep emotional component, is something entirely new to it? As they discussed the implications, a message arrived from Earth. Senator Frank Donovan had given a fiery speech condemning the alien infiltration and questioning the Zorlaxians' true motives. Public opinion was shifting, with many humans now suspicious of the aliens' intentions. We're running out of time, Alan said, looking at the worried faces around him, both from the void and from our own people's fear. Kate placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we'd better figure this out fast. Because if what you're saying is true, Dr. Russell, humanity might be both the target and the only hope against this thing. Paul nodded, already modifying equipment to run new tests. Good thing we humans work best under pressure. The Zorlaxians watched with wonder as the 3 humans threw themselves into the work with renewed energy. Despite the catastrophic news, despite the political challenges, they showed no signs of giving up. It was, Krelthar realized, precisely this irrational hope in the face of overwhelming odds that made humans so different from his own people. And perhaps it was exactly what they needed to survive. We've lost contact with Outpost Zeta 9, the Zorlaxian communications officer reported, his skin pulsing with anxious red light. Ambassador Krelthar stood motionless in the Mars facility's command center. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the news. Zeta 9 was one of the last Zorlaxian outposts monitoring the Void's advance. Its loss meant the Void was moving faster than they had predicted. How many of your people were stationed there? Alan asked quietly. 216, Krelthar replied. All scientists and their families. Lieutenant Kate Peterson studied the star map displaying the Void's progress. At this rate, it will reach your home system in less than 6 months. The ambassador's skin dimmed to a dull gray. And Earth within 2 years after that. Paul Winters, who had been unusually quiet, stepped forward. We need to see it. All heads turned toward him. See what? Kate asked. The Void, Paul said simply. Not just recordings, we need to see it in action up close. Our research has hit a wall because we're only working with second-hand data. Alan shook his head. That's too dangerous. The Zorlaxians have lost ships trying to study the Void directly. They lost ships because they were trying to fight it or analyze it with their technology, Paul argued. We might see something they missed, something human. Kate surprised everyone by nodding. He's right. Military Strategy 101, know your enemy. And right now we barely understand what we're facing. Krelthar's skin flickered with uncertainty. Our fastest ship could reach the edge of the affected zone in 3 days. but I cannot authorize such a mission without approval from my government. Then don't authorize it, Kate said firmly. We'll go anyway. Alan stared at her in shock. That would violate at least a dozen protocols. So court-martial me when we get back, Kate shrugged. If we don't find a way to stop the void, protocols won't matter anyway. 2 days later, against direct orders from both Earth Command and the Zorlaxian High Council, Kate, Alan, and Paul boarded a Zorlaxian scout ship named the Starlight. Felnar, the Zorlaxian scientist who had been working closely with Paul, volunteered to pilot the vessel. If we survive this, I'm definitely getting fired, Alan muttered, as the ship broke orbit from Mars. If we survive this, you'll be a hero, Kate replied. If we don't, being fired will be the least of our worries. The Starlight was small but fast. Its sleek silver hull contained technology beyond human understanding, including a propulsion system that somehow folded space rather than traveling through it. The journey that would have taken human ships years was completed in just under 3 days. On the 3rd day, Velnar called them to the bridge. We're approaching the last known location of Outpost Zeta 9. The view screen showed a star system that should have been bright with planets and space stations. Instead, half of it was simply missing. Not dark, not destroyed, but absent, as if that part of reality had been erased. What are we looking at? Kate whispered. The edge of the void, Velnar answered, his voice trembling slightly. Where it meets normal space. Alan pressed his face against the viewing port, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was seeing. It's not consuming matter, he said slowly. It's consuming reality itself. Paul was already connecting his modified sensors to the ship's systems. I need readings from the boundary zone. Felnar guided the ship carefully toward the edge of the void. As they approached, the instruments began to malfunction. Static filled the communications channels and the ship's lights flickered. Close enough, Velnar said nervously. Any closer, and we risk being pulled in. Paul's sensors hummed as they collected data. On his screen, strange patterns formed. Not quite energy readings, not quite matter analysis, but something in between. It's alive, Paul breathed. Or at least it's conscious. Look at these patterns, they're like brainwaves, but on a cosmic scale. Alan leaned over his shoulder, eyes wide. You're right, it's some kind of collective consciousness, but empty, hungry. It's trying to fill itself with the consciousness of others. A violent shudder ran through the ship, throwing them all off balance. We're being pulled in, Velnar shouted, his hands flying over the controls. The engines can't break free. Kate grabbed a nearby rail to steady herself. Can we go to full power? We're already at maximum, the Zorlaxian replied. The void's pull is too strong. Paul looked up from his readings, face pale but determined. I have an idea, but it's crazy. Crazy is better than dead, Alan said. Paul rushed to the engine room, Kate and Alan close behind. The Zorlaxian ship's propulsion system was built around a glowing crystal core that pulsed with blue-white energy. Your engines work by creating a field of ordered consciousness, right? Paul asked Velnar, who had followed them. The crystals are amplifiers for your pilot's thoughts. Velnar's skin flashed with surprise. How did you know that? It's one of our most guarded secrets. I figured it out from the design, Paul said, already pulling components from the walls. The void feeds on ordered consciousness. So what if we give it chaos instead? He pulled a small device from his pocket, a neural interface he had modified back on Mars. This reads human brain patterns. If I connect it to the engine core and reverse the polarity, you could disrupt the void's pull with the chaotic nature of human consciousness. Alan finished, understanding dawning. But the feedback could fry your brain. Not if we buffer it through the ship's systems, Paul said, already connecting wires. I just need something to amplify the signal. Kate unholstered her standard-issue sidearm. Will this help? Earth guns use quantum stabilizers that might boost the signal. Paul grinned. Perfect. Velnar, I need access to the main crystal chamber. The Zorlaxian hesitated only briefly before pressing his hand against a panel. A section of the wall slid away, revealing the pulsing heart of the ship. Working with frantic speed, Paul integrated the neural interface with Kate's gun and connected the makeshift device to the crystal. Everyone back away, this might get messy. What are you doing? Alan asked anxiously. Introducing a little human chaos into the equation, Paul replied, placing the neural interface on his head. He activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal flared blindingly bright, changing from blue-white to a swirling rainbow of colors. The ship lurched violently, then shot backward away from the void. On the bridge screens, they watched in amazement as a ripple spread through the edge of the void where their ship had been. For a brief moment, the void actually retreated, as if recoiling from an unexpected pain. "It worked," Kate exclaimed. Paul sank to his knees, exhausted but triumphant. "Did you see that? It didn't like the taste of human consciousness when it wasn't nicely ordered." Velnar's skin pulsed with a color they had never seen before, a deep purple that seemed to indicate profound amazement. In thousands of years, no one has ever made the void retreat, even for a moment. Alan helped Paul to his feet. The bigger question is why? What is it about human minds that disrupts it? "It's not just our minds," Kate said thoughtfully. "It's what Paul did. He didn't try to fight the void with logic or force. He improvised a solution no one had ever considered using technology from two different worlds." The ship limped back toward Mars, its engines damaged but functional. On the journey home, they analyzed the data Paul had collected. The more they studied it, the clearer the picture became. "The void isn't a species," Alan explained to Krell-Thar when they returned. "It's a cosmic force that absorbs consciousness itself. But it can only process ordered, logical consciousness, like the kind your people have. Human consciousness is too messy, too contradictory. It disrupts the void's ability to feed." Back in the Mars lab, Alan developed a new theory. If human brainwaves can temporarily disrupt the void, then a network of human volunteers, their consciousness properly amplified, might create a shield strong enough to stop its advance completely. Kate frowned. "You're talking about using humans as a weapon." "I'm talking about using what makes us human as a weapon," Alan corrected. "Our chaotic, emotional, unpredictable minds." As they debated the ethics and practicalities of Alan's plan, a message arrived from Earth. Senator Donovan's movement against the alien infiltration had gained enough support to force a vote in the UN. The Mars facility's funding was in jeopardy. "We're running out of time," Krell-Thar said gravely. "My people can provide the technology to create this consciousness network, but we need human volunteers." "And how do we convince people to volunteer when half of Earth thinks you're the enemy?" Kate asked. Paul, who had been quiet since their return, looked up with determination in his eyes. "We show them what we saw. We make them understand what's really at stake." Alan nodded. "The void is coming for all of us. It's time humanity knew the truth." The Great Hall of the United Nations fell silent as the holographic image of the void filled the air. Representatives from every nation on Earth watched in horror as the cosmic darkness consumed an entire star system. Ambassador Krell-Thar stood, motionless beside the projection, his skin a dull gray of sorrow. "This footage was taken just 2 weeks ago," he said, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. "The Zelnar system was home to over 30 billion of my people. Now nothing remains." President Laura Chen rose from her seat, her face grim. "Ambassador, while we sympathize with your losses, Senator Donovan has raised concerns that your people may have caused this catastrophe yourselves. That this void might be a weapon that got out of control." Senator Frank Donovan, a tall man with silver hair and a commanding presence, stepped forward. "The timing is suspicious. The Zorlaxians appear just months before this supposed threat reaches our solar system. They immediately request access to human test subjects. Ladies and gentlemen, we are being manipulated." Alan Russell, seated with Kate and Paul in the science delegation, could barely contain his frustration. They had returned from their unauthorized mission to find Earth politics had turned against the Zorlaxian alliance. "Senator," Alan called out, standing despite protocol, "my team and I have seen the void with our own eyes. It's not a weapon. It's not a natural disaster. It's something else entirely. A cosmic entity that feeds on consciousness itself. Senator Donovan's eyes narrowed. Dr. Russell, you violated direct orders to stay away from the void. Your judgment is compromised, possibly by Zorlaxian influence. Kate stood next to Alan. With respect, Senator, the void is real and it's coming, not just for the Zorlaxians, but for us too. We estimate Earth has less than 2 years before it reaches our solar system. Paul pulled up data on his tablet, projecting it beside the image of the void. We discovered something important. The void is disrupted by human consciousness. Our unique brain patterns, our emotions, creativity, even our irrationality, interfere with its ability to feed. President Chen studied the data carefully. Are you suggesting humans can fight this thing when the Zorlaxians cannot? Not alone, Alan clarified. But together, yes. We need Zorlaxian technology to amplify human consciousness into a shield that could protect both our worlds. Ambassador Krell Thar stepped forward, his skin now glowing with a faint blue light of hope. My people are prepared to offer Earth our most advanced technology as payment for your help. Medical knowledge that could cure your most devastating diseases. Clean energy systems that would end your dependence on fossil fuels. Even the secret of interstellar travel. A murmur ran through the assembly. Even Senator Donovan looked momentarily intrigued. In exchange for what exactly? The president asked. Volunteers, Alan answered. We need 50 humans willing to connect to a consciousness network that would create a shield against the void. And what happens to these volunteers? Senator Donovan demanded. Alan hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough for Kate to notice. Dr. Russell, tell them everything. Alan took a deep breath. The process is not without risk. The neural load would be significant, but our simulations show it should be manageable with proper medical support. What Alan didn't say, what he couldn't bring himself to say in front of the world's leaders, was that his simulations also showed a 10% chance of permanent brain damage to the volunteers. The debate raged for hours. But in the end, faced with undeniable evidence of the void's approach, the United Nations voted to support the joint Human Zorlaxian Defense Project. Within days, more than 20,000 humans had volunteered for the Consciousness Network. 1 month later, the first test of the shield took place at the Mars facility. Alan, Kate, and Paul had volunteered to be among the first 10 humans connected to the network, alongside 7 other scientists and military personnel who understood the risks. The connection chamber was a marvel of both human and Zorlaxian engineering. 10 reclined chairs arranged in a circle, each surrounded by glowing crystals and monitoring equipment. At the center stood a larger crystal that would amplify and direct their combined consciousness. Last chance to back out, Kate said to Paul as technicians attached neural interfaces to their heads. Paul gave her a nervous smile. And miss a chance to be the first human to weaponize daydreaming? Not a chance. Alan supervised the final preparations, checking each connection twice. Ambassador Krell Thar watched from the observation room, along with representatives from Earth. Beginning neural synchronization, Alan announced, taking his own seat in the circle. Everyone, remember your training. Don't fight the connection. Let your thoughts flow naturally. The central crystal hummed to life, bathing the room in soft blue light. Alan felt a strange tingling at the base of his skull as the neural interface activated. Then suddenly, he wasn't alone in his mind anymore. At first, it was overwhelming. 9 other consciousnesses pressing against his own, each with their unique thoughts and feelings. But slowly, guided by the Zorlaxian technology, their minds began to harmonize without losing their individual qualities. Neural synchronization at 60%, a technician reported. Consciousness field forming. Through the viewing window, Krell Thar and the others watched in awe as a visible energy field began to form around the 10 humans. It shimmered with constantly changing colors, reds and blues, greens and purples, shifting like emotions themselves. Activating. Shield projection, another technician called out. The energy field expanded outward, filling the chamber and then extending beyond it, projected by amplifiers positioned throughout the Mars base and in orbit above. Alan could feel the others in. The network, Kate's disciplined courage, Paul's boundless creativity, and the unique qualities of each other volunteer. Together they formed something greater than themselves, yet still distinctly human in its beautiful chaos. Shield integrity holding at 87%, the lead technician reported excitedly. This is working. For 3 hours they maintained the shield before gradually powering down the system. As the neural connections were severed, Alan felt an intense sense of loss, as if part of himself had been cut away. But when he opened his eyes, he saw the toll the test had taken. 2 of the volunteers lay unconscious, and another was having a seizure as medical teams rushed to help. What happened? Kate demanded, removing her interface with shaking hands. Neural feedback, Alan admitted quietly. The load was heavier than we anticipated. Later, in his private office, Alan reviewed the medical data with growing concern. The risks were higher than he had told anyone, even his closest colleagues. Extended exposure to the network would cause permanent neural damage, possibly even brain death. You knew, didn't you? Kate's voice came from the doorway. She entered without waiting for permission, closing the door behind her. Alan couldn't meet her eyes. I suspected. The simulations showed it, but I hoped the real-world results would be different. You lied to everyone, to the volunteers, to Earth's leaders. What choice did I have? Alan asked desperately. The void is coming. Billions of lives are at stake. What's the sacrifice of a few compared to that? Kate slammed her fist on his desk. That's not your decision to make. People have a right to know what they're volunteering for. Their argument was interrupted when the base alarm suddenly blared. Paul burst into the office, his face pale. The void has accelerated, he said breathlessly. It's reached the outer edge of the Zorlaxian home system. And there's something else. We've detected void activity near Saturn. It's not just coming from one direction anymore. Alan and Kate stared at him in shock. It's specifically targeting us, Kate whispered. Both humans and Zorlaxians. Alan closed his eyes briefly, the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. Then we have no choice. We need to activate the full consciousness network immediately. With the truth this time, Kate insisted. The volunteers deserve to know exactly what they're sacrificing. Alan nodded slowly. You're right. No more secrets. He turned to Paul. How long do we have? At its current speed, Paul calculated. 2 weeks, maybe less. Then we have work to do, Alan said grimly, and hard truths to tell. The sky above Earth darkened as the void approached. It wasn't a cloud or a shadow. It was the absence of stars, a perfect blackness that spread across the night sky like spilled ink. Around the world, people gathered in streets and open spaces, looking up with fear and wonder at the cosmic threat. In Washington, D.C., Senator Frank Donovan stood silently before a massive screen showing live feeds from space telescopes. His opposition to the Zorlaxians had crumbled in the face of undeniable evidence. The void was real, and it was here. I was wrong, he admitted to President Chen, who stood beside him. I thought we were being manipulated. I never imagined. None of us did, the president replied quietly. But we're not finished yet. Dr. Russell's team is making their final attempt. On the Mars facility, now expanded to accommodate 50 human volunteers and hundreds of Zorlaxian technicians, Alan Russell made his final inspections of the consciousness network. The circular chamber had grown, with 50 reclined chairs arranged in concentric rings around a massive central crystal. Kate Peterson moved from volunteer to volunteer, checking their neural interfaces. After Alan had revealed the full risks, many had withdrawn, but remarkably, hundreds more had stepped forward to take their places. Are you sure about this? Kate asked a young woman being prepared for connection. My family is on Earth, the volunteer replied simply. What's my life compared to theirs? Paul Winters, meanwhile, had made last-minute modifications to the network. The problem is that we've been thinking about this wrong, he explained to Alan and Ambassador Krelthar. We've been trying to create a shield to block the void, to keep it out. That is the purpose of the network, Krelthar said, confused. Paul shook his head. The void isn't just drawn to consciousness. It's drawn to human emotions specifically. It's not trying to destroy us, it's trying to understand what it lacks. Alan's eyes widened as he grasped Paul's insight. So instead of shielding ourselves, we should be communicating, Paul finished, sharing our experiences, our emotions directly with the void. Kate joined them, concern etched on her face. You want to connect with that thing? After what we've seen it do? What if it's not malevolent? Paul suggested. What if it's just hungry? Empty? What if it consumes consciousness because it's trying to fill some void within itself? They debated furiously as reports came in of the void appearing simultaneously at both Earth and the Zorlaxian homeworld. Time was running out. Finally, Alan made the decision. We'll try Paul's approach, but with a smaller team. The regular network will still activate as planned to buy us time, but Paul, Kate, and I will attempt direct communication with the void. I must join you, Krelthar insisted. My people must be part of this attempt. As alarms blared throughout the facility, the 50 volunteers took their positions. Engineers activated the system while Alan, Kate, Paul, and Krelthar entered a smaller chamber with a specialized version of the network. Consciousness network activating, a technician's voice announced over the speakers. In the main chamber, 50 humans closed their eyes as their minds joined together, creating a powerful field of chaotic human consciousness that extended outward from Mars. In space, the shimmering shield became visible, pushing against the encroaching darkness of the void. In the smaller chamber, Alan and his team connected to their modified network. Remember, Paul said as the neural interfaces activated, don't fight it. Don't try to push the void away. Instead, share your most human experiences, your joys, your fears, your loves, your losses. As their consciousnesses merged, Alan felt the others with him, Kate's strength, Paul's insight, and the strange, orderly mind of Krelthar, so different from the humans yet now part of their shared consciousness. Then they felt it, the void. It was vast and ancient, a presence that existed beyond normal space and time, and it was empty, achingly empty, seeking to fill itself with the consciousness of others. Now, Alan thought to the others, share everything. Together they opened their minds and memories. Alan shared the wonder of scientific discovery, the joy of understanding, and the grief of losing his father as a child. Kate shared the discipline of military service, the camaraderie of soldiers, and her secret fears of failure. Paul shared his creativity, his outsider's perspective, and his deep loneliness growing up different from others. And Krelthar, to their surprise, shared the beauty of Zorlaxian music, the love he felt for his family, and the crushing responsibility of trying to save his species. Into the void they poured birth and death, love and loss, hope and despair, the full spectrum of conscious experience. Not fighting, not shielding, but offering freely the very thing the void had been consuming by force. On Earth, people watched in wonder as the void seemed to pause in its advance. The darkness hesitated, swirling in strange patterns above major cities. In space, astronauts reported seeing colors within the void, blues and reds, yellows and greens, where before there had been only blackness. Something's happening, President Chen whispered, watching the feeds. In the Mars facility, the main consciousness network began to fail as volunteers went into neural shock. But in the smaller chamber, Alan and his team maintained their connection, pushing deeper into communion with the void. It's responding, Paul's consciousness whispered to the others. It's learning. They could feel the void changing as it experienced human emotions for the first time, confusion giving way to curiosity, hunger transforming into wonder. It was like teaching a newborn to feel, to understand the world beyond its own existence. For a timeless moment, they connected with the entity that had terrified galaxies. They felt its loneliness, its ancient journey through empty space, its desperate search for something to fill the emptiness within itself. We see you, Alan projected into the void. We understand your hunger. But you don't need to consume us to know us. We can share willingly. Across Earth and the Zorlaxian homeworld, People watched as the void began to retreat. Slowly at first, then faster, the darkness pulled back from planets and stars, leaving them untouched. In the Mars facility, alarms blared as the main network collapsed, volunteers falling unconscious as their neural connections overloaded. Medical teams rushed to stabilize them, but the smaller team maintained their connection for crucial minutes longer. As the void retreated, it left behind a final impression. Not words, but a feeling of gratitude and wonder, like a child discovering a new sense. Then the connection broke, and Alan, Kate, Paul, and Krelthar collapsed in their chairs, exhausted but alive. Hours later, they gathered in the facility's observation dome, watching as the stars returned to Mars's night sky. Early reports confirmed the void had withdrawn from both Earth and Zorlaxian space, retreating to a distant corner of the galaxy. It didn't want to destroy us, Alan said softly. It wanted to understand what it was missing. Emotion, Kate nodded. Consciousness with feeling. Ambassador Krelthar's skin glowed with a new color, a warm gold they had never seen before. For thousands of years, my people believed our logical minds were superior to emotional species, like humans. We saw your feelings as primitive, unnecessary. Now I understand they are your greatest strength. Paul looked out at the stars. What happens now? With the void? I believe it is processing, Krelthar said. Learning to experience consciousness in a new way. Perhaps someday it will return, not as a threat, but as something new. 1 month later, Earth and the Zorlaxian Confederacy signed a historic alliance. The volunteers who had survived the consciousness network were celebrated as heroes, and humanity took its first steps into a wider universe, no longer alone among the stars. They came to us begging for help, President Chen said at the signing ceremony. But in the end, what saved us wasn't our technology or our weapons. It was our humanity itself, our capacity to feel, to share, and to connect even with something as alien as the void. Ambassador Krelthar bowed deeply before the human delegation. We thought we were teaching you about the universe. Instead, you taught us about ourselves. Alan, Kate, and Paul stood among the honored guests, still recovering from their experience, but forever changed by it. They had looked into the darkness between stars and discovered that sometimes the greatest gift humans can offer is simply being human.